It's a beautiful facility. What I'm going to do right now to get started, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do some quick introductions, starting with myself and my staff. My name is David DiCrescenzo. I'm the editor-at-large for American Patriots Press, and I'll be your moderator this afternoon for this forum. Over here, thank you. We have the Vice President of Rebel Light Productions, a writer, a producer, and an actress, Miss Jeannie DiCarlo. We have retired police officer and political pundit, Mr. Bill Finley, affectionately known to you as Wild Bill for America. And last but not least on my panel, we have Mr. Matthew Kennedy, who is the managing editor for American Patriots Press. Will we please have a nice round of applause for my panel, and I'll get the candidates up here forthwith. I'm going to be introducing our candidates in alphabetical order, starting with Mr. Deon Long. Deon is a graduate of the University of Florida and the University of Michigan Law School and practices law in Orlando, Florida. Being a father of 4 children prompted him to serve on the boards of charities that are dedicated to provide underprivileged children with academic scholarships. He was appointed by Governor Jeb Bush to be the chairman of the St. Johns River Water Management District Governing Board. It is my pleasure to introduce to you candidate for the United States Senate, Deon Long. Next, we have Mike McCalister, who served honorably in the Army National Guard, Army Reserves, and on active duty for a total of 33 years. Colonel McCalister holds multiple degrees, including a Bachelor of Science degree in Agriculture from Southeast Missouri State University, a PhD in Management from the Union Institute in Cincinnati, and he also studied at numerous military colleges, as well as completing the Harvard University program in Senior Executive Leadership. Please welcome Colonel Mike McCalister. Next, we have Ron McNeil, a man that has never held elective office, yet has personally met with President Ronald Reagan. He is an inventor, manufacturer, and businessman who has accomplished national and international business for several decades. As well as that, he also holds multiple patent claims. He has spent the last 2 decades solving environmental problems for cities and industry, and is the author of 2 books, Have We Lost Our Minds? And Painless Rebuilding of American Greatness. Please welcome Mr. Ron McNeil. Next on the list is a man who had the value of hard work instilled in him at an early age by his parents. After attending Cocoa High School, he served in the U.S. Air Force and was deployed to Vietnam. After his service, he attended Florida State University and then finished at Florida Tech University, majoring in business administration. He learned the restaurant business and spent 17 years with Pizzeria Uno before taking over the reins as president and CEO of Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. In 2007, he was appointed as State Tourism Commissioner by Governor Jeb Bush. Please welcome Mr. Craig Miller. And last, but certainly not least, our final candidate was born and raised in Cuba under Castro's communist regime. She's a conservative columnist at RenewAmerica.com. She has fought against a major Florida government bailout and stands firmly in defense of human life and family. Please welcome Marielena Stuart. Now we're going to get down to the questions in just a minute, but first I want to establish the ground rules for everybody on this forum. First and foremost, this is indeed a forum and not a debate. So we're going to ask the candidates to answer the questions without discussing other candidates. The questions have been carefully crafted and researched by American Patriots Press so that they're direct and to the point as they possibly can be. We did a lot of work and a lot of people that we talked to get up to be ready for this day, and the major theme that we heard was that the questions should be clear and concise, and we would ask that the responses also be as clear and concise as possible. With that said, after a question has been asked, I will select one of you to start the answering, and we'll go left to right, and I'll keep track of that for you. You'll have up to a minute to respond, and if you get to the minute point, I will very gently say, time. And that means, shh. Okay. By the way, if any candidate does mention another candidate in his or her response, I will allow that candidate a 30-second counter, but I'd like to really keep that to a bare minimum, please. Okay, the questions will cover a wide range of topics and issues. Some have been submitted by the Tea Party. Some have been submitted by people, calling people on the street, and some by my panel and myself. After the last question, we're going to allow each of you up to 2 minutes to make a closing statement. And let's see. Okay. With that said, this is a really good time, if you have a cell phone with you, to please either turn it off or set it to vibrate. And I have one question for all of my friends out here. Tea Party, are you ready? Yeah. Candidates, are you ready? Yeah. All right, let the games begin. We're going to start with our first question by Mr. Bill Finley. Bill, if you would.
Our founding fathers fasted and prayed to Almighty God for divine intervention, while risking and sacrificing everything they ever had, including their families, their fortunes, and their lives to build this nation. Are you willing to do the same to restore this great nation of ours? And what would be your first order of business?
We'll start the responses with Mr. Long on the far end.
Yes, I definitely would. My whole thing that underpins my campaign is the devolution of power out of Washington, D.C. back to the states and back to the people. And for us to get this, we need to get rid of this progressive tax code we have. We need to get rid of deficit spending. We need to get rid of inflationary monetary policy. And we need to get rid of trade protectionism. I propose to do that by adoption of a fair tax, by returning to the gold standard, by adopting a balanced budget amendment, and by setting in place a free trade regime.
Thank you. Colonel McCalister, will you please follow?
Yes, absolutely. And I think we're probably going to have a lot of consensus with this panel. Conversations had with them. I think we need to get the federal government back to the job of the federal government and get them out of the state government business. I would enforce the Constitution. We need to get American companies back to work, to get Americans back to work. So we need to create a much more business-friendly environment that levels the playing field, less regulation, less taxes. We also are going to have to do a better job protecting our borders, and we're going to have to do a much better job with our national security at all levels and all means. So I think that what we've got to do is to get the federal government fulfilling their role in the U.S. Senate, particularly under the Constitution.
Thank you. Mrs. Stuart?
Our Constitution is the greatest document ever written by human beings after the Bible. We need to understand that, we need to uphold that, we need to defend that, and we have to be willing to do it to the extent of giving our lives for it. I am a citizen politician, as Ronald Reagan used to say, who has stepped forward as a homeschooling mother, as a wife, and as a conservative columnist, because I do not like what is happening to our beloved country. We have to be willing to say out loud that we need to be independent with our energy resources, that we cannot have a socialist government in Washington, because socialism does not go along with our founding values. And this is what is happening. I stand firmly behind the Constitution. I stand firmly behind the founding values.
Time. Thank you.
Well, I'm Ron McNeil. For those of you who know me, realize that I'm not going there to be politically correct. I'm going there to correct politics. We're going to change this nation. He asked the question, what would be the first thing he did? Other than eliminating Obamacare from the face of the earth, my first thing I'd do would be to make this country back to where we can employ American citizens by completely redoing the tax system for businesses. If you don't make where America is the bastion of free enterprise with low taxes on businesses that's fair to everyone, and you don't have 78 Fortune 500 companies not paying any taxes, then we're never going to get this country employed again. If we don't get it employed, the rest of the problems we will never fix. So we've got to make it where America is the place that you can get employment by making this the best place on earth to do business, not the worst. As a young man, I was offered 26 years tax-free if I'd build one of my factories in another country. We are competing against those kind of things, and that's what we've got to do first, is get it back where we can get American citizens employed.
Time. Thank you very much. Mr. Miller.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here this afternoon. My name is Greg Miller, and I'm really interviewing to be your next United States Senator. And the answer to your question is an absolute yes. When I was 18 years old, I volunteered and joined the United States Air Force, and then volunteered and went to Vietnam in 1969. To all the veterans in the room, and I met several of you, welcome home and God bless you. America is at a crossroads in the 2012 election. There is no question about that. If we can't get our economy back on track, if we can't start putting people back to work, the rest of what's going on in America becomes far less important. And we have too many things that need to be done for our nation and for the people that, for all of the American people. One of the first things that I would do, was to try to create an attitude and a concept of getting away from us being a dependent nation and become an independent nation again. What I say about that is let's become less dependent on foreign oil. Let's reduce our dependency by at least 50% in the next 10 years. Let's get ourselves out of this debt.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be by Jeannie DiCarlo, and we will start the answering once she finishes the question with Colonel McCalister.
Since Roe v. Wade in 1973, 53 million, with an M, babies have been aborted in the U.S. What is your position on abortion? And what legislation would you sponsor to advance that position?
Well, I'm pro-life, and I raised a kid. You know, and it's easy to stand on a stage before a voting public and say I'm this and I'm that. But all of us that have raised children understand the meaning of that. I was the sole custodial parent of a 4-year-old son. Been through that. I signed the state personhood amendment. I believe that every unborn child has a right to make it into this world. I would like to see this done at the state level because I want to do it under the 10th Amendment, because I also signed the 10th Amendment. So I think we need to put on the ballot in Florida. I hope we get enough signatures on this initiative to put the personhood amendment on the ballot, and I'd like to see every state in America do the same thing.
Mr. Stuart.
I am pro-life without exception. I believe that taxpayer funding of abortion, including Planned Parenthood, is a violation of our judicial doctrine and our constitutional rights. In Washington, I will do everything to stop the killing of the unborn and to defend life from the moment of conception until natural death. Anyone who does not understand that a human being begins life at the moment of conception doesn't understand the message. Over 50 million Americans have been exterminated in this country. That's equivalent to a whole nation. Spain, France, you can just go down the line. Imagine a whole nation exterminated. That has happened in our country. That has to stop. And it is an urgent thing that we must do.
Yes, I'm certainly 100% pro-life, and unlike probably anyone else up here, I raised children from 5 different decades. My first son was born in the 60s, a girl in the 70s, a girl in the 80s, a boy in the 90s, my last little daughter, Gabrielle, born in 2001. So I do like life. I've seen every McDonald's on earth, and I've seen every school on earth. I don't like what's happening to a lot of it. You know, it's kind of strange that we would take a guy like Michael Vick that killed a couple of dogs and put him in prison and it cost him $100 million, yet we'll almost reward and glorify all the doctors who are killing off unborn children. We have killed off 53 million of them. It's a disgrace. I will never vote for $1 of any kind of money of any kind, including if somebody's trying to pass my own tax bill. I won't vote for $1 that'll ever go towards abortion of a child, period. The end of the story.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
I, like the rest of the candidates in the race for the United States Senate, all of us are pro-life. I was raised Roman Catholic. I believe that life starts at conception. I would likewise not vote to fund any federal funds associated with aborting lives. And we all need to speak out in behalf of the unborn and continue to keep it on the focus of the American people. As I go to Washington as your United States Senator, as a career businessman and job creator, I want to spend the rest of my time that I have to promote the ideas of where I come from, the values I have, and the life's experiences I've had, building jobs and creating opportunities for others.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Long, your responsibility.
Yes, sir. I'm pro-life. I do believe in the 3 exceptions, where it's rape, incest, and life of the mother. Reminds me of a story that somebody told about a grandfather who was walking along the beach with his granddaughter, and there were all these starfish out on the beach because the waves had receded. And the granddaughter goes in and starts picking up the starfish and throwing them back in the ocean. And after 10 minutes, she was sweating profusely, and she said she was tired. The grandfather said, "Why are you doing this? It's not making a difference." And the granddaughter picked up one and threw it in the ocean and said, "It made a difference to that one." And I know that there's this battle to say it's all or nothing, but if you look at 53 million abortions that have happened since Roe v. Wade, I know that if you have the exceptions, you can save 50 million lives. And I think that that's where we should go. And I think that when you look at the basis of it, and as far as gestation in the womb, that I'm not going to play God and tell who's between a mother and a daughter, a child, which life is most important. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow-up, King?
Yes, this is a yes and no. Mr. Long. In the case of rape and incest, do you feel that makes a baby's life any less innocent?
No, I don't. I think that if life begins at conception, which is what I believe, and we have exceptions to what's considered murder, anything that's outside those exceptions would be murder. I would still think that would be killing a human life, but because of the circumstances and what has gone on,
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't know if that was
No, my apologies. I should have told you that was meant to be a yes or a no question.
Okay, sorry.
Alrighty. Moving right along to our next question. Matthew?
Candidates, there is an invasion. The UN is controlling it. And Florida's American Patriots would like to hear your thoughts on this. It's called Agenda 21.
Mrs. Stuart, if you'd please start.
Agenda 21 is right up there in my top priorities as your future U.S. Senator. Having been born and raised under communism, I know firsthand what socialism, which is nothing but communism covered up, can do. I am the daughter of a political prisoner. I am the niece of one of the longest held political prisoners in the Western Hemisphere. Agenda 21 is an international scam of communism, and it is right here in Florida. It has entered our local governments. I know it full well because we have it in Collier County. I have been fighting it since 2008. And it is very difficult to fight, and it is a top priority for me on the floor of the U.S. Senate to let every single American know that Agenda 21 is here, it has arrived, it is taking your properties and your rights away.
Thank you.
Yes, Karen Showin's a good friend of mine and has been fighting this Agenda 21 fight for a long time and is doing a heck of a battle of it. Listen, all of you need to go to those clinics that are teaching about Agenda 21. This stuff's been going on for decades and decades and decades. And for me, nothing's going to circumvent our United States Constitution. That's the only law we're under in America, is our U.S. Constitution, not the UN, not Agenda 21's diabolical politics that they're trying to pull off to change this nation into the one world government and all the wealth redistribution. They don't want the middle class to have more, they want the middle class poor. If you're poor and controlled, so you have to depend on governments everywhere, then for your substance, you're going to keep those people in power with this liberal and progressive agenda. So I'm as far against Agenda 21 as I can, and you all need to get educated towards Agenda 21.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Likewise, I believe that education is the most important thing that we can promote against Agenda 21. I also believe as a nation that we need to take a very, very hard look at the relationship we have with the United Nations, the amount of support we give the United Nations, and what we get in return. We need to start treating our friends like friends and treat our enemies not like friends. And as I look forward and enjoy the opportunity to serve you in the United States Senate, I'm going to speak out for the American people. I'm going to speak out for our values. America is the greatest nation on earth. We need to reestablish ourselves as a strong economy. From that strong economy will be a stronger nation.
Thank you. Mr. Long on the far end, if you would.
Yes, I'm against Agenda 21. I'm a firm believer in property rights. I'm involved with a group called Coalition for Property Rights, and I think that that's the biggest thing, one of our constitutional protections, the right to own property. Where I came, and I guess it was a precursor of Agenda 21. If you're looking at what the state of Florida is doing, when I was on the St. John's Water Management District, when they were buying property and taking property off of the private tax rolls, and we were buying easements and doing the things like that, that we're doing it. So I'm definitely philosophically against Agenda 21. I think it encroaches on the sovereignty of our nation, and I will protect it, and that would be one of the things I do if I'm lucky enough to be a U.S. Senator, that I will definitely stop that in its tracks.
Thank you. Colonel.
I think we got a pretty conservative group up here, and it's too bad the rest of everybody that you're going to see on ballots doesn't share some of our same values. But Agenda 21 and the one world government, I've traveled the state from one end to the other, went down and fought with Durham and Miami-Dade Property Appraiser's Office in Miami over this issue. We need to recognize that, number one, it was never confirmed by the U.S. Senate. And we've got to stop. It's a classic example of this president bypassing Senate confirmation and basically legislating from the White House. It's unconstitutional. We need to recognize it was only implemented by executive order, and yet the guilt is at every level. We have got to educate not just our public, but our elected officials. We've got to stop our county commissions and city governments and county governments from taking the free money, for them to realize there's strings attached. I've spoke about this with our Attorney General and our Governor. I know they're aware. We can't allow it. It's got to be stopped. We bought and paid for this country with our dearest blood. We need to review the treaty with the UN and get out.
Thank you. Before we go to our next question, I have two quick things. First of all, I have a question for the body here.
I think it's safe to say that one of these gentlemen and young lady is going to make it to Washington, D.C. and replace Senator Bill Nelson. By a round of applause. You're going to do real good at this one then. By a round of applause, how many of you people in the Tea Party think that whoever goes to Washington should help disband the UN and get him out of our country? Please take that to D.C. wherever goes there. Thank you. Also, one more thing, folks. You'll notice there's a little red box right there at the front of the stage. That's going to be moved down back. If you're going to have to leave early, whether it's a set of, any kind of a parole that you might have, please put it in that box. Thank you.
Take down that gun in front of the UN, too, the twisted gun barrel.
Yes, thank you very much. When they disband that, that'll go as well. The next question right now for our candidates. This is the first of several yes or no questions. Bill Finley.
Most of we the people, including many in the Obama administration, are against Obamacare. Will you take steps to repeal it? Yes or no?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Deon?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
Colonel? Marielena?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Our next question. By the way, there's going to be a lot of yes and no's, so be on your toes.
Well, I just want to go on record on saying yes also.
I heard you. We all heard you. Thank you. Our next question, Jeannie.
The U.S. has been directly attacked by Muslim extremists numerous times. We see groups like CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood trying to force the use of Sharia law in our courts. There has been at least a dozen documented cases of this. CARE wants Americans to walk on eggshells so that we could be silenced into a slow submission. And our current leaders are refusing to stop this assault on our way of life. What steps will you take to stop these groups and the spread of a very dangerous, creeping Sharia?
We'll start the answering with Mr. Miller.
Well, the first thing, and one of the most important things that a United States Senator has a responsibility to do is make sure that we put the right kind of people on the U.S. Supreme Court and in our federal court system. I believe that America is for Americans, and I believe that American law is the only law that Americans should be following. Our Constitution is very clear. So the attempts to invade our country from the outside has to have the strength of the leadership in Washington to stand up and make it crystal clear that we're not going to tolerate that type of invasion of our country. And we're going to stand up and put the right type of people in our judicial system. And the United States Senate candidate from Florida better be standing right there with Marco Rubio and the other conservatives and making sure that we do that.
Thank you. Mr. Long on the other end, would you respond?
Okay, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't know much about Sharia law. I've heard it since I started campaigning, where people say that it's a big thing, it's a big issue in this country domestically. From what I know about America, I would find it hard-pressed to think that somebody or other people can come in here and for what we're fighting for as far as the Constitution and what we believe in, that's the biggest threat that we're facing, that internally somebody's going to press and put a Sharia law. I think if you want to look inside to what's eating this country apart, more that's going on inside Washington, when you look at what's going on with the lobbyists, when you look at what's going on with the bureaucrats, when you look at what's going on with what I call the fifth column as far as the media there, that's what's going to eat us from inside. And so if there are issues, as Mr. Miller has stated, that'll be handled by law enforcement if it's something that's not, that goes beyond that. But beyond that, I think that we should go within the Constitution, and just because somebody's looking at Sharia law, I don't think that that's anything that's going to be done by the government.
Thank you. Colonel McCalister.
Yeah, I guess this one's a little bit of a sensitive subject for me because I got activated one time when I was almost 50 years old on military duty full time because of the war on terror. We got to make sure our elected officials and our public understands all of these different pieces. Not everybody that practices Sharia law is a terrorist, but we still have to take a look at some of the issues and some of the background there. We've got to make sure our federal judges do a better job of enforcing the Constitution. We cannot allow to continue to have laws where people can use against us with First Amendment or freedom of speech in church. We cannot allow textbooks in our classrooms, in our schools, to be infiltrated by publishers and influences. We got to have no Sharia law courts or banks in this country. And we've got to make sure that we send a clear message to the world that if you're going to come here, we got a language and we got a legal system. And either you abide by it or don't come and leave.
Thank you. Mrs. Stuart.
This is the result. Sharia law and this type of implementation into our country is abominable. This is a result of law by judicial fiat. I will passionately oppose any judge that wants to enter our legal system who will try to circumvent the judiciary. In other words, what is happening is these judges are trying to assume the power of Congress instead of making their decisions according to the tradition of the judiciary. We have to stop this. This is again one of my priorities. If we can have judges that follow the Constitution to the strict text of our sacred document, we would not have to worry about this judicial activism, which again is abominable.
Thank you very much. Mr. McNeil.
I would just like everyone to go to my book, Have We Lost Our Minds? Starting next week, you can download it free at McNeil 2012. Chapter 17 is on religion in America. I have an awful lot to say about Sharia compliance law. What that is for is so that they can keep their people in slavery, and it's a political and religious dogma that they can keep their people in slavery, and women just like slaves. If you leave that religion, they can have you killed, or they can do anything they want to you, and they want their law to circumvent the United States law where women have to be treated as human beings. You know, we love women, and if you're a woman and you vote for anybody that has anything to do with Sharia law, you've got to be out of your mind. Now, what is called having lost our mind. We haven't. I'm the guy, by the way, that said that at ground zero, I would do everything in my power to keep that mosque from being built at ground zero. And if we were forced to make it be built there, I wanted it as low as ground zero. I don't want it 15 stories tall.
Thank you, sir.
I want us to walk by and see their top of their mosque like they can see ground zero.
Thank you.
Our next question, please, you folks, if you want to apply an answer, you go right ahead, that's fine. Our next question, Matthew.
The exact number of illegal aliens living in the U.S. is unknown, but real estimates put the number at around 25 million or more, and the cost to American taxpayers is staggering, especially with the abuse of the 14th Amendment with regards to anchor babies. This is not just an ongoing economic crisis, but also a critical national security issue. What is your plan to remedy this problem immediately?
We'll start on the far end with Mr. Long, please.
One of the top issues I have that I'm a proponent of the fair tax. And if you know anything about the fair tax would be the opposite of what's going on now. So if you were illegal immigrant and you were here in this country, you would still have to pay the included consumption tax that's part of the fair tax. But because you are not a citizen, you wouldn't be entitled to get the rebate that's part of the fair tax that gets rid of regressivity. So that being an economic decision, I think that's going to drive a lot of illegal immigrants to go back to their home countries and come in the right way. As far as the anchor baby, I think that's something we should look at, and that should be changed. The rule as far as anchor babies should be changed, and that you should be the offspring of 2 American citizens for you to have citizenship here. And we should include just if you make it over the border and you're born here that you automatically become an American citizen.
Thank you. Colonel McCalister.
Well, I think what we need to do, you mentioned the 14th Amendment, we need to read it. And to me, it's not clear that everybody born here under all circumstances is a citizen. And I think we need to look at what some of the wisdom was that the Founding Fathers were discussing there. I think we need to realize that this is a country that pays its bills based on revenues. We've got to take care of the home folks first. We've got to stop the liberals from trying to tell hardworking American families that you've got to go earn extra money so that other people can get a free ride. We've got to send a clear message to the world. We bought and paid for this place with our dearest blood. And just because you show up here doesn't mean we owe you anything. You want to be here, you got to be here legally. You want to work here, help pay for this. You want to live here, be a contributor, not a taker. And if you want to be a citizen, we have a process that you need to respect and follow. And for me, please learn to speak English.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stuart, same question.
The biggest reward that an immigrant or a political refugee has when they arrive in this country is the U.S. Constitution. That is a reward that people die to be able to live under. We need immigrants who respect our immigration laws and who are willing to wait and come in legally. Now, I say this from personal experience. I know that there are a lot of immigrants that suffer and they want to come here. I went through hunger with my family. Again, as I've said, I'm the daughter of a political prisoner. I suffered persecution. We waited, my family and I waited to enter this country legally. We knew that the reward waiting for us at the other end was a U.S. Constitution. We need immigrants that respect that. We deserve that as a nation. Nothing less than that.
Thank you. Mr. McNeil?
You know, if we'd have spent anywhere near the money we spent on nation-building wars trying to prop up a bunch of regimes and hate our guts overseas, we could have already built a Great Wall of China all the way around the United States. We could have protected our nation. We need to do something similar to that. We have to stop illegal immigration, because it's not only the illegal immigrants that are coming in, it's all the trading of human lives and all the drugs that are coming across our borders, destroying our nation. We need to protect America first. And people who have these anchor babies, if you came here to have a child, your child has no right to be in this nation. You have no right. If you're an illegal and you come over here, you don't have a right to have anything in America, including all the entitlements that we're giving these people that are crossing that border. They can take their children back to Mexico. I don't care if they're 50 years old. Take them on back if they never joined the United States of America.
Thank you very much. Mr. Miller.
Thank you. You know, we can talk a lot.
Please allow us to ask the questions. Thank you very much. Mr. Miller.
And we can talk about all of the issues surrounding the number and the amount of illegal immigrants aliens that are in our country, and the consequences they have on our nation, on our economy, and the future of our country. What I like to do is talk about the solutions and the background that I have as a business person and a job creator and an employer. In the companies that I work for, we created over 40,000 jobs. The restaurant industry has really been ground zero from the employment standpoint, attacking this issue all the way back to 1986 when the laws changed. I'm a big proponent of a mandatory federal e-verification system. I put it into my company, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, in 2006, and I can tell you it works. The best solution that we can have for this is to strengthen our borders, get all of the American people to stand up and say we're not going to tolerate it anymore.
Okay. This next question will be our second yes or no question. Jeannie, if you would.
No.
Question number 7.
Number 8.
No, 7.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Forget what I just said. Question number 7, Bill.
The good news is that new oil drilling has just commenced on November 1st off the coast of Florida. The bad news is it's being done by Cuba. The U.S. has vast untapped oil, coal, natural gas, and a huge supply of hot air thanks to Al Gore. What steps will you take to ensure we start tapping our own resources and stop our dependence on foreign entities, most of which want to do us harm?
We'll start with Mr. Miller and work that way. Mr. Miller?
Thank you. That's one of the top 3 things that I think our country needs to address, not only from a dependency standpoint of foreign oil, but also from the fact that we have and spend $750 billion of our assets every year, sending those assets overseas many times to people that are not our friends. We need to drill. We need to take all of the resources that we have in this country and use them first, not last.
thank you very much. Mr. McNeil.
You know, we have about 200 years worth of energy right here in America, and oil and coal and natural gas. We have no business buying oil from any foreign country, period, other than Canada to our north. Right now we're financing both sides of the wars against us. Not only are we doing nation-building wars, but we're buying so much fuel from those people that despise us that they're financing the war against us with the oil money we're sending over there. We have got to be crazy to do this kind of thing. We've got enough oil. Can you imagine what can be invented in the next 200 years to give us energy? Let's make America totally 100% energy independent, period, in the next decade, and quit buying foreign oil, period, other than from Canada.
Thank you. Mrs. Stuart. 1 minute.
Americans have the right to access energy for human consumption that is affordable and that is safe, and we have it. And we must demand it, both because it is a very quick way of creating good jobs, and because we cannot depend on our enemies for energy. That's number 1. Number 2 is the countries that we pay money to every year in their aid, we must hold them accountable so that when they're out there helping Castro drill for oil, that we let them know we will not give you one more penny of aid if you continue to go behind our back and support tyrants. America comes first, and that means that when we write a check with the blood, sweat, and tears of the taxpayers of America, we hold every single country in the world accountable for that money.
Thank you.
They cannot betray us any longer.
Thank you very much. Colonel McCalister.
Well, I think we're all in agreement on this for the most part. Our country has an economic zone. We have a state waters that we can protect out to 10 or 11 miles, and then we have a national, federal economic zone that I think goes out maybe to 180 miles. So we certainly need to make sure we're enforcing that. But what we got to take a look at, and again, I think we all understand it. We've got to decrease our dependence on foreign oil. No question. It's not just draining our economy, but it is. Many of those dollars are used against us by countries that want to do us harm. We need to increase our domestic oil production at home, but hand in hand, we must increase refinery capacity. They got to go together. You can't pump it out of the ground and put it in your car. We need to have the energy grid that plugs in all sources. We need more nuclear, we need more coal, we need more natural gas, and we need to require the U.S. Department of Energy and the EPA to facilitate this process instead of constantly standing in the way. And I agree with Sarah Palin the other night when she said maybe Mr. Caribou up here needs to take one for the team so we can open up the Henmore province and we get the...
Thank you very much. Thank you. And finally, Mr. Wong, your response, please.
Yes, I'm going to make an admission. Sometimes I watch the Jon Stewart show, and when I watched Jon Stewart show, one time he did a skit, and it showed that since Dwight D. Eisenhower, everybody who's run for president's gotten up there and beat their hand on the and said that we're going to become energy independent, and we're going to do it, and nothing's happened since then. It's almost like fool's gold the way we're pursuing it. And so I'm all about the free market and allowing the free market. So I'm for giving more drilling in the United States, but I'm also a big proponent of nuclear power, and that we should use more nuclear power if we're going to use it in the totality of becoming energy independent. Now, after what happened in Japan, I know that seems more uphill now, but that's where we need to go with it. And this last thing, kind of going back to what Colonel McCalister was saying, there was a study that one time the Nature Conservancy found oil under land that they held. And before they were against oil drilling anywhere else, but guess what? $25 million they could get for oil under there. They found a way to drill and make it safe on land that they were holding in conservation.
Thank you very much. Okay, now back to what I was saying a second ago. Our second yes or no question, we're going to start with Deon. Jeannie, if you would.
In the name of so-called separation of church and state, God and prayer have been removed from many venues, both public and private. And now public schools are teaching a whitewashed version of Islam. Yet they removed our Christian heritage from our history books. Will you sponsor legislation to ensure this stops?
Mr. Wong, yes or no?
Can I ask for clarification?
Ask the question again, please.
I didn't follow it.
Okay, in the name of separation of church and state, God and prayer have been removed from public venues, from schools, okay? And now public schools at this time are teaching a whitewashed version of Islam. Yet they have removed the Christian heritage and all teaching of our heritage and Christian heritage from the schools in the same history books.
Will you sponsor legislation to ensure this stops immediately? Yes or no?
The teaching of Islam or the not teaching of
The question basically is this. They have removed teaching God and prayer in our schools. They have removed our heritage, yet in the name of separation, they did that in the name of separation of the church and states, but in the name of the God of political correctness, they're teaching a whitewashed version of Islam. Will you take steps to stop that immediately, yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. McCalister?
You know, if you can't read from the Bible, you shouldn't read from the Quran.
Yes or
so,
no?
yes, I would
Thank
take
you.
steps.
Mrs. Stewart?
Absolutely, yes,
Thank you.
and immediately.
Mr. McNeil?
Yes, get rid of the Department of Education, period.
Thank you. Mr. Miller? Thank you very much. All righty, the next question.
We'll start, let's see, we'll start in the middle with Mrs. Stewart. Matthew, would you please ask the question?
The Democrats have become viciously progressive and are not in line with the U.S. Constitution anymore. They are so far gone into socialism. How can we ever move forward as a country?
Mrs. Stewart?
The way we will move forward as a country is to go back to our founding values. The blueprint, the guide for our lives as a nation was set forth by our founding fathers. Socialism is completely opposed to everything that this country stands for. Nothing could be more foreign to our land than socialism. When you read the Constitution, when you read what our founding fathers wanted for this nation, you will see that socialism is completely opposed to all of that. So we will get this nation back to where it belongs. right where the Constitution is. That is the solution. And that is why the Tea Party is so critical to America, because it stands for our constitutional values.
Thank you very much. Colonel McCalister.
Yeah, we've got to elect a conservative Senate with true conservatives that have serious credentials to stand up to this. We need our U.S. Senate to stand up and fulfill its duties and responsibilities and authority that's been taken away from it by federal judges that are legislating from the bench and a chief executive that's legislating from the White House. And we've got to make sure we review all of our treaties and all of our agreements that should have Senate confirmation and see if we still want that, and if we don't, we change it, or if it should have had Senate confirmation and it never received it, such as Agenda 21, then we've got to make sure that we trash it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Long?
We need structural changes. We need to drain the swamp that's known as Washington, D.C. And the way you do that is, as I said before, and just the gist of platform that we're running on is we need to get rid of this current tax code and replace it with the fair tax. We need to get rid of deficit spending and adopt a balanced budget amendment. We need to get rid of inflationary monetary policy and all the atrocities that are being committed by the Fed and go back on the gold standard. And we need to implement a free trade regime.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
You know, it's the reason I've decided to step off Main Street and step into the United States Senate. We need to send different types of leaders to Washington. We did some of that. You did a lot of that in 2010. We need to do a lot more in 2012. Let's send principled conservatives to Washington. We retake the United States Senate. We will stop this socialist agenda. We will stop the direction that our country has been on for the last 3 years, and we will return our nation to the economic power and strength that has brought us to be the greatest nation in the world.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. McNeil.
Well, with the power of the Lord and the foot power and the voice power of the Tea Party movement, that's the only hope we got to turn this nation around. It's this Tea Party right here. There's thousands of you all over this nation. It's going to send people like myself up there that won't be politically correct. We're going to correct politics when we're in Washington. You know, those people, until they feel the heat, they're not going to see the light. And the Tea Party and all of us throughout this nation that are dedicated to be the patriots of this nation we have to be the Patrick Henrys and the Madisons and all the rest that form this nation. We are those leaders today, and it's going to take us to go up there and change this thing.
Thank you very much. Our next question, and we're going to start at the end with the responses, will be from Bill. Bill?
In the name of tolerance and diversity, school children at all educational levels are being forced to embrace the homosexual lifestyle, and in some cases are being taught how to perform homosexual acts. What will you do to stop this assault on our youth, culture, and the future of this country as we know it?
Mr. Long, we'll start on your end.
Well, the first thing, I'm against the Department of Education. One of the things, I'm a strong proponent of states' rights and the sovereignty of states, so I would get rid of the Department of Education for the first thing as I move towards that. As far as the curriculum and what was doing on the state level, I've kind of heard O'Reilly and those guys in their segments say that's going on. My kids are grown now, so I haven't been that cognizant of it, but I would definitely have a problem with it. But the first thing is to get the decisions made back to the states where the federal government and the Department of Education has no input in it.
Thank you very much. We'll go right in order. Colonel McCalister, your response, please.
Yeah, I agree with what's being said. We need to abolish the U.S. Department of Education and return that right to the states. And visit states, we need to stand up and make sure that our education in our counties and in our cities are doing what's right for America and our future generations. We need to respect parents' rights. And if we want something to not be taught to our children in the school, such as this particular topic, then it shouldn't be taught. They should have the right to opt out, and the parents should have a right to be involved in that. And we need to get the state back to textbook committees that are comprised of not just academic professionals, but with parents too that have a serious interest to make sure that the books that we're using in our schools are what we want to be used in them, that are teaching them the right values and what we're going to need.
Thank you. Mrs. Stuart.
This is one of the reasons I became a homeschool mother. My children are here with me, and that is what has given me the opportunity to run for the United States Senate for this great state of Florida. I have to tell you that as a homeschooling mother, no one wants to see more than me the Department of Education completely cleaned up. I think that the states need to have more power to be able to control what is going on with the education at a local level. And in terms of homosexuality, I believe that marriage is between one man and one woman. And any attempt to circumvent that, which is a divine mandate, is nothing but an abomination and an abuse of our laws under the Constitution in a way to legalize sexual freedom. It must be fought. I will fight it on the floor of the Senate. I will not apologize for it. As conservatives, we have to include being social conservatives.
Thank you. Mr. McNeil.
Yes, we have to get the education out of the ideology business, period. And we need to get education out of Washington, period. If they want to have a little office about as big as this building to do stats with and figure out what's happening in all the states so they can make recommendations somewhere, that's one thing. But we need to get the government out of the business of being in education and choosing the ideology. You know why the Tea Party groups that I've spoken to all over this state, nearly everybody's been out of high school a long time. And you know why that's the only ones there? It's because everybody else has been indoctrinated on all this stuff that you're hearing here today. And so they're not there because they don't understand the value of our country and our founding fathers' documents and of all the people that invented the products that made our life better. So when they understand those things, we get education in the business of giving real education and the truth about our nation, we will all be better off, and our children will be certainly far better off.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
You know, I'd probably choose to give the Department of Education in Washington an office about the size of this podium. You know, I'm a firm believer that education starts at the home, and it starts with our school boards and our local schools. I think the federal government should step back, push these decisions down all the way to the lowest level, and you won't have the type of initiatives coming out that you're talking about. So if we will just step back for a moment and understand where education really starts, where it's funded, and push it down as far as we can into the local communities and local school boards, I can guarantee in the county that I'm from, if there was anything that raised its head about that type of initiative in our local school board, it would not be allowed.
Thank you very much. And our next question is by Jeannie. We're going to start on this end of the podium with Mr. Miller once the question is asked. Jeannie?
Is this a yes or no? Sorry.
No, this is not.
A small but well-funded portion of the U.S. population seems to be okay with socialism, communism, redistribution of wealth, which is rising to the surface with the Occupy Wall Street movement. The rise of communism always leads to the confiscation of guns, which in the past has led to mass murder of a country's citizens. This movement is supported by the Communist Party USA, China, the Nazis, the unions, including the SEIU, President Obama, and other high-ranking Democrats. How is this movement sitting with you?
Well, it doesn't sit very well with me. I came from a very self-reliant family, and I was asked last week about some of the Occupy folks that are sitting out in front, and someone asked me the question, says, if you were advising these people, because I've been advising young people all my life about career opportunities in my industry and how you grab a hold of the ladder and pull yourself up, and my answer to them was, get off your ass and go get a job. And, the opportunities are still here in America. The opportunities are still here. We need to send a different type of leadership to Washington. We need to stop focusing on socialism and communism influences that are clearly coming through. And I think there's more of it out there than we ever thought. And it really surfaced since 2008. And I think we turned the tide in 2010. And we're going to do it again in 2012 by replacing Bill Nelson, the U.S. Senator. Thank you.
Mr. McNeil.
Well, I'll give my Forrest Gump answer. If that's the best the liberals can do to create a Tea Party, they sure are screwing up, aren't they? Lord have mercy. Can you imagine if all of us all over the nation were closing people's businesses and just planting ourselves for weeks at a time in tents and on parks and urinating on the bushes and drinking and doing drugs? What kind of media we would be getting? Good Lord. Those folks, they don't have any ideas. That's why they don't invent anything. You ever had anything in your life that made your life better that was invented by a federal government employee or one of those liberals? I don't think so. So I'd let them do whatever they're doing there. But son, the Tea Party's fixing to take over this nation. Going to take this nation back and restore American greatness. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Stuart.
We have to take this situation seriously. This is called anarchy. It is dangerous. It has the George Soroses of the world behind it. It is absolutely evil. And to think that it's going to go away and that it's just a bunch of kids beating their drums would mean that we would be taking very serious chances. When you look across the world, in Europe, here in America, everywhere where these riots are taking place, this is reminiscent of what I lived through in communism. The masses. Do you know what happens after the masses begin to riot this way? They begin to kill people. That is the second step. Do not underestimate this. It is dangerous. It needs to be stopped. And that is why it's so important that we put people with character and true conservatives on the floor of the Senate to change the moral and fiscal makeup of Washington and to do it right away.
Thank you very much. McCalister.
You know, Wednesday, I did the media event, as did one of the other gentlemen in Tallahassee. And I brought out the threat to our country is not just domestic, but national security and communism and the role in that. And some of you may have seen, they made fun of me, said I'm antiquated. Just Friday, yesterday, key front piece in the Tampa Tribune talked about how Russian, Soviet, and Chinese intelligence agencies are continuing to steal and pirate our highly sensitive high-tech technologies to use against us, both economically and militarily. And I think back to the old former Soviet Union when we were told by them, I will beat you from within. We've got to make sure we have a domestic policy that protects our way of life here at home and that maintains the family as the pillar of American society. And we can't forget that Vladimir Putin stood in our White House just about a month ago and thumbed his nose at us and called us a leech. So my friends, we've got to educate the world and our officials, and we need the media to help us do that. This isn't funny.
Thank you.
It's still a force.
Thank you. Mr. Long.
Back in July of 2008, I spoke at my first Tea Party event out in Melbourne. And I remember the first thing I said, the first thing they're going to do, they're going to call you racist and they're going to ridicule you because you're doing your First Amendment right where you get to go protest and have your voice be heard. That's the same thing that's happened with the Occupy Wall Street. We can ridicule them, they probably want the wrong solutions, but they're mad at the same thing that the Tea Party's upset about. And it's what Sarah Palin coined as crony capitalism. And what they're doing, they're mad at the banks, they're mad at the same thing, except with the Tea Party and with people from our ilk, we think the solution is in individuals get back to constitutional government. They think that if you take over the government, you can control those other business situations. And so I don't think that they're a national threat or anything like that. I think that it's just a different expression of the same thing that Americans are upset with, where we have lost faith in all our institutions, whether they're political, financial, or religious.
Thank you.
This is our third yes or no question. And by the way, all questions after this will be yes or no. So please listen carefully. Matthew, if you would.
Should English be the official language of the United States? Press 1 for yes or 2 for no.
Starting with Mr. Long.
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Bill, your question, please.
Every time the government has a problem with money, DC uses scare tactics like cutting things such as Social Security, military pay, and benefits for the elderly. will you take steps to ensure these scare tactics are eliminated? Yes or no?
Starting with Mr. Long on the end, we'll go that way the whole way.
Yes.
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 Okay, everybody said yes on that. Now the questions are going to start getting tougher. This is going to be a lightning round of yes and no questions. Jeannie, if you would.
Will you commit to sponsoring legislation that would cut Senate and House salaries so that they are more in line with the average American salaries?
Yes or no, Mr. Long?
Yes.
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 Excellent. Jeannie, next question.
Will you commit to sponsoring legislation that would abolish the outrageous pension and medical benefits members of Congress enjoy after serving? Yes or no?
Mr. Long?
Yes.
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 Absolutely.
Okay. And the final one in that lightning round, Jeannie?
Will you commit to sponsoring congressional term limit legislation? Yes or no?
Mr. Long?
Yes.
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 One in prison and one in office.
There you go. All righty.
Y'all are gonna love this one. Matthew?
We all feel a great deal of empathy and sadness when some natural disaster strikes a foreign nation, and there are lots of victims. However, instead of borrowing money from our creditors like China so we can send assistance to the stricken, doesn't it make more sense that we have China bail out the next disaster on the planet?
Yes or no, Mr. Long?
Yes.
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 I would agree with that.
Excellent. And let's see, Bill?
As a two-part follow-up to the above, will you take steps to end foreign aid to countries that undermine the United States?
Yes.
Yes.
Immediately, yes.
Yes.
And all foreign aid.
There you go. And the last follow-up to that, Jeannie?
And will you take steps to stop the insane practice of borrowing money from China while at the same time including them in the foreign aid dole?
Yes or no, Mr. Long?
Yes.
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 Very much so, yes.
Excellent. Okay. Now we have a little bit of a special surprise for you.
Because we have some extra time here.
Great.
This is me walking down the stairs. What I'm going to do is this. I have got time for 2 questions from the audience. First question right here, this young lady. By the way, you folks have 1 minute to answer this.
Okay.
Please state your name.
My name is Christine Kenny, and I'm from Lake Worth, Florida. Can you tell me, and this is for the whole panel, in one word, why America is the greatest nation?
Americans.
Okay, tell me that, please.
Americans.
People. People.
Mrs. Stuart.
Our Constitution.
Patriotic citizens and our freedom.
Liberty.
Excellent. Do we have another question? I see a gentleman over there. Why don't you meet me halfway? Please state your name and the question, if you would.
My name's Bob Sorrells, and I'd like to know what you're going to do about the Federal Reserve. Transparency, control.
Mr. Long.
Well, the first thing, as you know, I'm for the gold standard, so I'm for neutering the Fed, and so I'm for handcuffing the Fed, and that way you don't have to worry about Bernanke or Greenspan. As a precursor to that, I would support audit the Fed to get the transparency, but the goal is to get to where the Fed is not trying to calibrate the economy based on interest rate policy.
Thank you. Colonel McCalister.
Yeah, I think we need an audit of the Federal Reserve so that we can know where our money's going, and then I think we need to have a maintaining of transparency and accountability in the GAO for congressional oversight.
Thank you. Mrs. Stewart.
An absolute cleanup of the Federal Reserve. It is one of the most deceitful things that we have had in this country. There's nothing federal about it. And we must demand it, and I will demand it the minute I arrive on the floor of the Senate.
Thank you. Mr. McNeil.
Yes, the Federal Reserve is a worldwide organization, not just a U.S. organization. We need every dollar in America printed, authorized by the United States Congress and Senate, and passed normally, and we need to manage our own funds and get the Federal Reserve out of here, and we're certainly going to audit them.
Thank you very much. Mr. Miller?
I would agree that we need to open up the books. We need to understand, transparency is a word I like to use. We really need to find out exactly what the Federal Reserve is doing and understand the implication it has, not only on our country, but on the world economy.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. This gentleman right here, please state your name.
My name is John Hammock, and I'd like to know how you feel about repealing Amendment 17.
We'll start all the way to the left. Mr. Long, please.
I'd be for that, but even if I'm an elected senator, I still think that my interest is the interest of the state of Florida representing those in Washington, D.C.
I would like to repeal the 17th, but I'd like to replace it with a new one. I want to get back what our forefathers wanted us to have, and that was to have the U.S. Senators recallable to the states. But I want to maintain our rights as the voting public to select them and not turn it over to Tallahassee. So I would like to have an amendment that they are elected at large and then recallable to the states if they don't do what's right for us when they get to Washington.
Thank you. Mrs. Stuart.
Yes, I think that there needs to be a change to Amendment 17, but also it is extremely important for me, and I put this on my website, term limits. You're in there for no more than 12 years and you get out. And then you spend the rest of your life helping the younger ones to continue the good work that you started.
Thank you very much. Mr. McNeil.
Yes, you have to tie this, obviously, to term limits, but they were supposed to be, the senators were supposed to be representative of the state, like the state of Florida, and they were appointed by the government officials rather than being elected. And so I would repeal the 17th, but the problem I have is that not only do I not trust politicians, I don't even like them. So I kind of hate for them to select us. So it has to be where they can be recalled by the citizens of the nation often. And like I say, senators and congressmen, a lot of them I've seen need to have a 2-term limit, one in office and one in prison.
Thank you very much. Mr. Miller.
Well, I didn't sign up for that, but you know, the direct election of U.S. senators, the 17th Amendment, you know, is something that we could start working on and we could move toward that. But I think in 2012, what's important for America right now is let's recall Bill Nelson. Let's send a conservative Republican to the United States Senate, and let's stay diligent in our efforts to promote the philosophies and ideals we have. If we will elect different kind of leaders to the United States Senate, we can turn our country around and we can bring it back to the prosperity that we've historically had. I had that opportunity as a young person. Many of you had. I want that same thing for my children and grandchildren.
Thank you. Matthew, do we have time for one more audience question? Yes, we do. Right over here. I saw your hand before. Please state your name and your question.
Yes, my name is Edward Bender. I'd like to know, if invited, would any of you ever attend a meeting of the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, or the Trilateral Commission?
We'll start with Mr. Long on the left.
No, no, and no.
Colonel?
I want to say no, but then I think, can I bring a camera and a tape recorder? I would go if I could film it and tape it and then release it.
Thank you. Mrs. Stuart?
Absolutely not. These are communist entities.
Thank you. Mr. McNeil?
I would meet with anybody on earth, including old Satan himself, and let him know the Tea Party's on the way, and we're fed up, we've had enough, and we're going to restore America, and we're going to protect America's interest only, no matter what the rest of the world does.
Thank you very much. And finally, Mr. Miller?
I would not participate in meeting with organizations like that. I enjoy speaking to folks like you and meeting with you here in Daytona Beach. Thanks for coming out today. It's a great pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, one quick announcement before I give our candidates a moment to thank you all. If you do have those ballots, please notice there are 2 sides to them. Don't vote today if you're going to be here tomorrow, but if you're not, you can vote today. With that said, I would like to offer each of our candidates, first of all, I would like to thank you all for your attendance this afternoon, and I would like to invite you all up to 2 minutes to speak, and we will start on the end with Mr. Long. You have 2 minutes to give your final statement.
Okay, as I stated, when I first spoke at the Tea Party back in July of 2008, there was a lot of things that people said, well, you know, these don't represent really what America's about. And it reminds me of a book I read when I was a kid. It was called A Rabble in Arms, and it was a historical fictional account of the Continental Army and the fight against the British. And what I've come to think about the Tea Party, and I'm saying is that if you're a rabble in arms, I want to be involved with the rabble in arms. I think the biggest compliment I've gotten, and I tell people that you can't claim the Tea Party, you can't proclaim yourself Tea Party, the Tea Party has to claim you. And hopefully during the course of this campaign, with us going out and we're campaigning throughout the state, that a lot of the things that we propose that we want to move forward, that the Tea Party will see that we're going to be the candidate that can best represent that interest going up to Washington and getting power out of Washington, getting it back to the state, getting it back to the people, getting the fair tax, getting the gold standard, getting the balanced budget amendment, and also getting a free trade regime put in. Because if we want to save this country, it's all about getting it out of Washington. We have to put Washington down once and for all. It's just like Jason. It keeps coming back in different iterations and everything, but we have to finally kill it. We have to put an albatross around it, and we have to sink it. And one of the things that I look at is that I saw a picture, it was of Yorktown. And it was of the British going down and Lafayette being down at the ocean and everything. And the British were going down to the sea and they were retreating. And the Continental Army was around. And the heading was the world turned upside down. And that's what's happening now. When we're victorious, when we're going into Washington, when we've accomplished these, that we can go, it'll show that it was a world turned upside down. One of my favorite movies to end on it was Patton. And Patton walked in, it was after Kasserine passed, and he kicked this soldier. And he says, "Who's kicking me in the butt?" And he jumps up, whatever. And Patton tells the guy that was with him, say, "Leave him alone." And this is the excuse of Miss Stuart. It says that leave him alone. He's the only son of a bitch around here knows what he's doing. Well, I'm the only son of a bitch in this race that knows what I'm trying to do. Thank you. God bless America. And love you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Colonel McCalister, 2 minutes.
Yeah, as I like to say, we got to continue this fight to take our country back and end these liberal giveaways. And it's going to be the Tea Parties and the 912s that save this country. You know, those of us that wore a uniform took a pledge. Protect and defend against the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We need our judges and our president and our Congress to protect and defend the Constitution, and we must replace the ones that's not doing what's right for America. We got to make sure that we maintain the Second Amendment and the 10th Amendment. We've got to get the legal handcuffs off, the American ingenuity and competitive spirit, and let us get back to work. We got to trash Obama economics and the Obama health care plan that has increased our debt and our unemployment. We got to throw the high-speed rail in the trash forever and restore the family as the pillar of American society. We got to keep America in the ownership and in the hands of American citizens and out of the hands of the federal government, out of the hands of China, and out of the hands of the UN. And we got to stop Agenda 21 because we don't need anybody else on this planet trying to tell us how to run our country. We got to stop taking union dues from paychecks. And we got to stop the government from quoting union dues from paychecks. And maybe we get rid of Janet Napolitano and get someone running Homeland Security that knows what they're doing. And stop giving our money away to unfriendly nations and use it to save Social Security and Medicare. And we do need the full audit of the Federal Reserve and maybe get rid of the IRS and replace that with a fair tax. We need to promote free markets and stop the National Labor Relations Board from telling our companies where to have their jobs. And we got to stop this dumbing down of America, and it's by design, and get back to the values that made this country great. And we need to get the pride of American history, the teaching of the Constitution, the American flag, and the Pledge of Allegiance back in our schools so our kids know why this country is so great. And we got to stop the political correctness and coddling of Islamic extremists because they want to kill us and it can't be tolerated. And we've got to make sure we support Israel as the only democracy and ally we have in the Middle East. And we got to send a clear message to the world, again, that this is our country and we bought it and paid for it with our blood and our sweat and our tears. And if you want to be here, you need to know it's a privilege.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Stuart.
Is my adopted country. It opened its doors to me and my family after suffering torture, imprisonment, and tyranny under Castro's communist regime. America allowed us to walk into the greatness of its freedom and its founding values. But we are falling victims to a socialist incremental manipulation of the democratic system. I will take steps to stop the socialist agenda in Washington. And we have to begin with fundamental moral changes. I am pro-life without exceptions. I will oppose all taxpayer funding of abortions. I will defend marriage between one man and one woman. The Second Amendment, there is a fundamental connection between liberty and the right to bear arms. A free society cannot be burdened with tax increases. I will oppose tax increases. The economy and energy, we have to be free. We need to liberate our energy resources so that we don't have to depend on our enemies. I will vote only to confirm judges who will narrowly interpret the law based on the written text of the Constitution. Ladies and gentlemen, the socialist element in Washington, D.C. will incrementally nationalize the U.S. economy through legislative action. Our sovereignty and our property rights are at risk through the dangerous United Nations program called Agenda 21, which is nothing but international communism. I have lived it. I know exactly what Agenda 21 is, and you should too, because it is affecting us right here in the state of Florida. Let it be perfectly clear, our mission, our passion, together with raising our children, must be to combat these dangerous ideologies and protect our sacred constitutional rights as Americans. There is an impossible coexistence between socialism and our founding values. There is a temperamental antipathy between socialism and the strong military spirit of our nation.
Thank you.
This is a fight between good and evil. This is a fight between liberty and tyranny. And in the words of John Adams, liberty once lost is lost forever.
Thank you
may
very
God
much.
bless you and may God bless America.
Mr. McNeil. I've been in business all my adult life. I've done national, international business. When I was raised on a farm. We had a tin roof on the house and a composition shingle roof on the outdoor john. We had the best outdoor john in the neighborhood, though, because my dad went down to the hardware store and bought a commode seat lid and screwed down on it. I woke up and found a nickel in my pants. I figured I had on somebody else's breeches. And we have worked for decades trying to build companies. My name's appeared on the front side of thousands and thousands and thousands of paychecks from products that I invented or my brother invented, like the Ram trampoline, for example, my brother invented. And I've done many things in environmental. That we hire the people, we start the businesses, we run the businesses, we own the businesses, and we employ American citizens. There's a lot of difference between me and everybody else up here, that being one of them. You know, another thing is, I'm probably the only one up here. I used to say I was a conservative Republican. Since Ronald Reagan died, I am the conservative Republican. There's only one person up here that's been sitting down in the White House one-on-one in front of Ronald Reagan, and that's me. I stand for what America stands for. Somebody said one time in one of the meetings, man, you're like a John Wayne and Ronald Reagan rolled into one. You betcha. We're going to go make a difference in this nation. I actually have spurs in my truck out there. The big difference also is that I've written my books because I was going to be a spokesperson for Tea Party Americans to help canonize what we believe and why we believe it and what it is and what the solutions are to this nation. And they're right here in my books. Have we lost our minds and painless rebuilding of American greatness? I am the Tea Party messenger. You will never get a better messenger to go to Washington that's tougher and ready to do this. I have fought the battles. I've had a 10-year war with IRS. I intend to get rid of 16,000 of those people instead of adding 16,000 more IRS agents to us. We're going to change this nation. I want to see them take me on in Washington. I don't like politics. I don't like politicians. Somebody said in some of the Tea Party meetings, man, they're not going to like you in Washington. And I'll just close with this. I can't wait to see how much they don't like me in Washington. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Miller, please take up the podium again, please. Thank you.
Thank you again for having me here today. It's unfortunate that the career politicians that are in this race didn't choose to join us here today. What's unique about the folks on this stage is that none of us come before you as career politicians. I'm a business person. My dad was orphaned when he was 8 years old. My mom came from the sharecropper family in the central part of South Carolina. They raised me to be self-reliant. When I wanted to go to college, my dad said, good luck. I joined the United States Air Force as a very young person and volunteered to serve our nation before. I want to do it again. I want to bring my 40 years of business experience, creating over 40,000 jobs. I've signed more fronts of more checks than anybody in this race. I spent my entire life in service to the American people in the food service industry. I've served my industry for 15 years with the National Restaurant Association, promoting the same things we're talking about here today, creating the right environment where free enterprise takes over, and the freedoms and liberties we enjoy to take advantage of the opportunities we have as the American citizens and American people. We can retake our country. We need to look among all the candidates that are in this race and see who can beat Bill Nelson. Our common goal is who can beat Bill Nelson. I look forward to standing on a stage with that man sometime next fall and talk to him about the jobs that I've created and the fact that he's only had one job for 40 years, and that's in service to the people of Florida. It's time to bring him home. Let's retire Bill Nelson and elect a conservative